Okay. So we started, yes, in the last class we started with the price-based contract, and we already discussed two individual types, which is the lump sum contract, its advantages, disadvantages, when one is supposed to go for a lump sum contract, and if you consider the disadvantages of that, you have the other alternative, which is a schedule contract, or sometimes known as a item rate contract. And we have also found that it is also known as a unit price contract. Okay. So why this unit price contract? Because its advantages are, first is it is a fair basis of competition. Because as we say that, suppose you are again going to buy a, you are going to assemble a desktop. If you want to get the best price, then it should be like, it should be like all individual pieces, if possible, to be purchased at the lowest price, or uh, you just give a quantity and a specification. The unit price of them comes up, and then you can decide how much of it to purchase. So even after there is a change in design, or even after the change in quantity is required, it can be done, because only the rate is contracted, or only the rate of unit component or unit quantity is fixed. Okay. The next is, in comparison to lump sum contract, here changes in contract document can be made easily by owner. That means, since the only unit price is fixed, now if you keep on increasing the changing a bit of design that requires more of material, more of material will be procured, because unit price has already remained the same. So there is not going to be any discussion or bargaining over the price again. So this accommodates the change in design, as well as if minor changes in the contract document has to be made. For example, say, during course of work, you need to add something to that. A different material has to be added. That can also be added to the previous item rate contract. And since the price remains fixed, so whenever the contractor purchases it, or whatever quantity the contractor purchases and provides, the material, the unit price is fixed. So multiplied by the quantity that he procures, he will get the money. So with respect to lump sum contract, where the contractor was in a hurry to procure all the material at one go, here probably he will not go for that. He will procure as much material as required for the work. Okay. And the disadvantage of it is, see, it is very common in, as I say, it is very common in building construction industry. This kind of contract is because construction is something where the price keeps on varying with the time, price of material, price of labor, price of transportation, everything. So once you start a project, you start with a rough estimate, and it happens that in due course of construction, the total price that, the total cost that you are incurring, or the total price that you are putting, though the unit prices remain the same, but variation in quantities and all, or introduction of small changes in the contract document, leads to change in the total expected price that was given to the owner. So owner, when the work starts, owner is never sure how much of cost or what amount of money he has to take a loan for, or what is the total estimated, exact estimated cost which he can procure. Okay. So what he can also do, the one more disadvantage of this is, suppose he started going for a small contract and he has got the individual prices. So he starts the work without completion of the design. Now, as the work starts, he keeps on paying, and the works also keeps on going. And in the meantime, while first phase or second phase works are going, the later phase designs are getting finalized. So you need not wait. That is one of the advantages. Also, you can say advantages on one of the side, that you can actually start working on a project or constructing a project even before the complete design is over. Is it clear that disadvantage and the advantages of a item rate contract?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Next, very small different kinds. For example, say you just need to hire laborers for a small work. That means you have the material, you have the equipments and all. Only you need the laborers for certain pre-decided man hours and get it done. So here in this labor contract, generally all the materials of contract for the construction are arranged and supplied at the site of work by the owner or the client. That means, as one of the example I explained, that you purchased material for 2-story houses, but after making 1 story and incompletely covering up some of the work, your money got exhausted, but the materials which you have procured are still there with you. So what you do is, in the next phase, when you have few amount of more money in your saving, you only ask for labor contract. You go for a labor contract, where the contract is an agreement that how much you are going to pay to the laborers to get the necessary work done. And with what they will work with the materials which are supplied at the site of construction by the owner. So the labor contractor with whom you are signing the contract engages the labor and gets the work done according to the specification. Now this specification is something like the requisite amount of laborer you intend to recruit, or the contractor wants plans to supply you, depending on the amount of work to be done, the flow of the supply of material, as well as the deadline. Now, if the contractor who is signing this labor contract with the owner feels uh, that the time is too short, he might employ more laborers. If he feels the time is good enough and he can do it few number of laborers for good span of time, he will go for less number of laborers for more span of time. Sorry. Uh, okay. I was in this labor. So the contractor who supplies laborers get the work done according to the specification. That means the specification which was approved, which is approved in this particular contract. That means how many skilled laborers, how many unskilled laborers, how many semi-skilled laborers, how many supervisors, for how many days. Now all these things comes from a different chart where you have the exact amount of work, the man hour required to execute that work. So getting the dividing those man hours by the, just hold on, I'm getting a call. Sorry for the interruption. Okay. The third point here on the screen. The contract is on item rate basis for labor portion only. So it is something like you have signed a contract, which may be anything, which may be a lump sum contract, which may even be a cost-based contract. But for the laborers, the manpower that you employ, for that manpower, you are signing a special contract, and which is something like an item based item rate contract. That means if it is a semi-skilled laborers, you are signing a contract that unit rate of per day unskilled laborers or semi-skilled labor is this much. You need this many hours or this many days for the supply of those laborers, and accordingly contract is being signed. Now individually, for individual specification, it is an item rate contract or a schedule contract, but only for the supply of laborers it is a item based contract. So this is a special kind of item based contract only, which is commonly known as a labor contract, where the item rate is only given for the supply of laborers. Now if you recall your previous semester's estimation sessionals and all, and you recall the CBRA method of estimation, you had two different tables given one for the plinth area equations for the what can I say, the materials, and one was separately for four different kinds of laborers. So for the four different kinds of laborers, you have a unit contract also in the detail specification. You have, I don't know whether you have done with the detail specification or not, but in detail specification and costing, we go for this, if from the CBRA method or the detail estimation method, we go for this labor charges, the total amount of laborers that you need to employ. You directly can find out the total money that is to be kept, or depending on the work, those many number of days you need the laborers, you keep on signing a small contract, and since the unit rate is fixed for those many number of days, multiplied by the unit cost of laborers will give you the total cost. Now it is easier to sign a labor contract because now suppose you have started a work and during the work the materials are fixed, but you wanted something good, or you want to incorporate some other works which can be done by the laborers. So you need not change the parent contract, but for the additional laborers, for example, say you are making the ceilings and the internal electrical fixings were done, suddenly you realize that you have some gypsum boards and some other frames and all, you want to get the false ceiling get constructed. So while constructing the false ceiling in the house where the electrical fixtures were going on, because once the electrical fixtures are fixed, you cannot construct the false ceiling. So parallelly, what you go for is you go for another labor contract where you are just signing key, you need 4 laborers for 3 days for fixing the panels and all, fixing the frames, and then giving it a finishing touch for 3 days. So for only that part of the work, you are additionally signing an item rate basis contract, which is particularly in this particular case known as a labor contract. Okay. So remember this point, because I will come to this point after I finish this slide. I will tell you why then. Next point is the contractor is paid for the quantities of work done on measurement of different item of work at a stipulated rate as in the agreement. So in the labor contract, you are just agreeing the rate, the unit rate of manpower that you need or the contractor can supply. So you are providing, if you are the owner or the engineer or the client, you are providing the material of construction and you are providing it at the site. And the contractor with whom you are signing the contract is bringing in laborers at the particular stipulated rate as given in the agreement. So that also includes that the contractor will use his own tools for working. For example, say you have constructed the plinth and you are going for a earth filling. So you need the manpowers, requisite manpowers. The people will come and then give the excavated which was already excavated, those soil, they will fill it up in between the plinths. Now, are you still you are supplying the soil that needs to be filled up, you are supplying the sand that is going to be filled up, you are supplying the brick bats also which you have procured at your site. But workers are not going to work with their bare hand. They need some tools and equipments to do so. So those workers who are specialized in doing that kind of job needs to bring in their tools. You need, another example is you need to get the electrical work done. So you hire the laborers, you supply them wire, you supply them what? Bulbs, you supply them fixtures and fittings. But the screwdriver, the plus, or the screws, the sleeves, all those things are supposed to be brought by the workers themselves, because they know that to do the work that the agreement says, what are the things which they need to bring and what are the things which need to be supplied by the contractor. Now, a critical example that you might feel is, for example, say in your home, you are going for an installation of an air condition, a split air condition. So what you do is you purchase the air condition, you purchase a clamp on which the outdoor unit has to be suspended, everything you purchase and keep it at your home. Because those are unique, those cannot be brought in and those cannot be used multiple times. So the person who comes to install the air condition, he brings in what? He brings in a hammer, a chisel, a file, a drill machine, some wire to tie up, some insulating covers to insulate the copper wires and all. But see, if you have to place it above 1.5 meter of height, then you need to provide him a ladder. Now there is a conflict that happens that it is a kind of negotiated tender which you have done. You have directly called a vendor who has come to your house to fit the air condition. Now, in this negotiated tender, you have not promised what all things you are going to supply. So it happens that the service personnel comes and say, okay, I have all the equipments, I will break it, but at what point, at what height? If you need me to climb at a particular height, you need to give me a chair or a table or a ladder because I have not carried it. But similarly, if you are going for electrical work, that electrical laborers brings the ladder. So this sentence that is written in here, contractor uses his own tools for working, is a general convention. You cannot just constantly say that, no, in the contract I said that you are going to bring your own tools. That means you have to bring your own ladder also. You have to bring in the hand sanitizer as well as the other necessary gloves and all to protect yourself while working in this situation. No, not everything can be brought in by the workers, but particularly the tools required. Now, tools are something which can make the work easier, as well as it can be used at multiple locations. So if that thing can be used at multiple locations, then only the worker will bring it or they will keep it with them. But something which is specific to one particular destination of work, that has to be supplied to the workers by the owner. So the first line, the first point, and this particular fifth point should be, both of them should be there to clarify what exactly would be supplied by whom. Okay. Next is plants and machineries are arranged by the owner. So if you are hiring only the workers to cast a concrete slab, then the workers and the contractors will bring in those spades, those mixture machines and all, but the vibrators and all. But the mixing machine, the batch mixing machine of the concrete, now that has to be supplied by the owner. Or if the owner cannot supply, he has to arrange for that. That means for that particular activities which cannot be supplied by the laborers or which cannot be brought in by the contractor, owner has to sign other contracts with other contractor for arranging those. So once you get a work of getting a house built, you need to sign multiple different kinds of contracts depending on the advantages as well as avoiding the disadvantages. So doing a analysis of all this, you have to find out that for which part of the job, which kind of contract has to be signed. And the last point written here is the contract system is preferred by private sector but not adopted in government works. So as I say that in NIT Rourkela, where we do this government works, if we go for labor contract, we do sometimes in small work we do. But what happens is, say in your institute, say in your hostel, one of the tube light is not working. So a contractor will come to your room and say, okay, tube light is not working, he will change the tube light. And that is a labor contract because he is being paid for the man hours which he is spending. So he works as if like you will see that he comes to your hostel rooms, he delays everything, he takes half of the day, too much time, excessive time that they take, because the more time they spend, the more profit they will earn, which cannot be afforded in case of a government work, which should not be afforded in case of a government work. Government work should be focused for minimum cost. So labor cost is generally a bit more costlier than a lump sum contract or a schedule contract. Okay. So now coming back to that point, that the third point, that the contract is on item rate basis for labor portions only. Now it might happen that with the labor portions you have an item based contract which is particularly known as a labor contract, but you are supposed to supply the materials at the site, for which you need to sign a different contract with the material suppliers in your locality. So for that material supplies also, you can sign a separate contract with a separate contractor who supplies the material and transport it at your site. So that particular contract, which where only supply of requisite amount of material of a particular specification at a particular designated location by a particular date or deadline, is known as the material supply contract or a material contract. Has the slide changed?
Yes, sir.
Is the slide showing material supply contract?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So here almost everything remains the same, but in this form of contract, the contractors have to offer their rates for supply of a requisite quantity of material, inclusive of all local taxes, carriage and delivery charges of material, to be specified to the specified site or specific site within the time fixed in the tender. So the tender is only asking for the supply of a material. It is something like your online Amazons and Flipkarts. So you do an analysis and find out that who all can supply the material inclusive of all taxes and transportation and everything to your destination. Whoever supplies it at the minimum price, you purchase from him. But the material is only getting supplied. You do not pay always for extra for the delivery charge, or you do not always pay for the installation of the material that is going to be supplied. So the contract or a negotiated contract or maybe a limited contract where only the material has to be supplied, okay, is particularly known as a material supply contract. I'll give another good example. See, in our department, we have some plotters, some printers, some photocopy machines and all. So for that, we do a tendering process and sign a contract for supply of cartridge. Now, these cartridges are just to be supplied to the department, and the price should be inclusive of all taxes, including the delivery charges and carriage charges. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that the vendor has to come and fix the cartridge in the plotter. The labor charge is different. Okay. The labor charge is different. So once we get all the supply, we might ask some other vendor at a rate of say labor charge, which is commonly included in our annual maintenance charge, that in 1 year a particular vendor has been contracted. He will come and help us in installing those particular necessary things or inspections. So parallelly, we have a labor contract with a different vendor and a material contract with a different vendor. Okay, so that's mostly all about the price-based contract. There is one or two more, and if you keep on searching, you will find few more, which is a price work agreement, which is particularly a negotiated tender or a limited tender, where the price for a particular work only is agreed upon in the contract, and once that, so it is a lump sum contract for a small part of the work, the last one. And the target contract is, as I gave an example, say you fix a deadline and the target, and a contract is whatever has to be agreed within that particular time has to be executed. Okay. These are trivial, so I haven't given too much explanation, and that is not too much use. Those are very specific to individual cases. From case to case, this situations comes up. Okay. Now coming to the cost reimbursement, a different category of contract, the second category of contract. But the first example or the first type that I have explained here is a cost plus percentage contract. Now here comes some critical understanding. You have to be very clear that what is meant by the cost and on what part of the cost is the percentage fixed or the fixed amount is fixed. So let's take an example of, you want to make a small house where you need to sign a contract with a contractor for supply of material plus laborers plus getting the work done with those laborers. So complete thing you are signing, but you want to pay the amount of money in small phases, and also after you see the work is being done. So first the contractor has to get a part of the work done, show you his bills, and you have to pay that bill amount. Now the bill is something which the contractor has procured from the suppliers from where he has purchased the product. So he has purchased sand, cement, he has purchased water, he has purchased aggregates from a person, he has purchased brick from another suppliers. So the bills that he is procuring from those shops, he is submitting you, and you are paying that amount to him because he has already spent that money. But for what advantage will a contractor do that if he is not having any other profit, or if no other gain he is earning? Then why will he do that extra job? From where does he get his share of money? So for those we have some solutions. So first one is a cost plus percentage contract. It says that the contractor is given certain percentage over the actual cost of the construction as his profit. Now, a contractor who is procuring all this material at a particular cost from the vendor supplying it, how can he submit his own bill? How can he come and claim that, okay, this is a bill in my name and you have to pay me this amount of money because I have done this amount of job? So sometimes it is difficult for this particular person to procure a bill for their own work. So in the contract itself, what is promised is the actual cost of construction, including the materials and all, will be given. And whatever is the construction cost, a percentage of that cost, which is fixed initially, will be paid to the contractor. Okay. So can you tell me if this cost plus percentage contract will be favorable for the contractor or not, or under what circumstances will it be favorable for the contractor? Anyone can come up.
If the material cost goes higher, then
if the material cost goes higher, yes, if the material cost goes higher, since the percentage is fixed, the amount of money that he will get is also high. So
if you know
for
the supplier,
yes, please.
sir, if you know the supplier personally, so he can claim the bill, the extra charge. Like,
Yeah, you are right, but explain it in a proper way again.
like
What will he try to do? Be clear. What he will try to do?
sir, in the bill that he will submit to the owner, the prices are like higher than the actual price, like the false bill.
But how can he do that?
Sir, if he know the supplier personally.
Okay, but see, when the supplier is giving a bill, he has to submit certain tax against that also.
Yes, sir.
So why will he pay more tax just to give an extra profit to his friend from the second owner, from the owner or the client? Okay, so your answer, I guess this is Rajdeep, your answer was generous, that was very common, but that doesn't happen. Okay, that
Okay,
generally
sir.
always doesn't happen, because suppose I am a supplier, you are going to take material from me and a bill against that and give it to another client. So you will take a bill from me and give it to the client and you will get that money, and a percentage
Yes,
of that is your profit. Now, if
yes,
I say that I have sold at a higher price, okay, the same amount, if my price in my bill is going higher, then it may also happen that I have to pay more tax to government because I have sold higher amount quantity, but my principal, the money that I have got from you, has remained the same, is less.
yes, sir. Understands.
Understood?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. I understand.
So the whoever said previously, that is a Shamim, I guess. Shamim, can you repeat your response? Shamim, if you can hear me, can you repeat what you just said? At what circumstances is this kind of thing favorable for the contractor? Okay, I guess he's disconnected somehow, but okay, the intention behind it is, if the contractor procures the material from a party who sells the same product at a higher price, not an additional price, but at a higher price. Then he will get a more profit. That means his charges will be extra. But that is disadvantageous for the client. So what the client will do is he will try to prepare a different tender for supply of material, a different tender. And he will say that this particular person has agreed to supply the material, procure it from him, and then submit the bill which is there in the tender, and I will give you a percentage of that. It is something like what an architect does when he goes for an architectural consultancy. You sit with your client, you decide on the design, and then you do a detailed estimation of the project, and you say that if this is the house that you built, this much amount of money will be utilized. So from time to time, whatever payment the client does, an architect keeps a track of all the project, all the investment that he makes, because he is going to charge say 2.5% or 5% or 2% of the total project cost as his consultancy fee. So if his design incurs more material or costly material, his consultancy fees will be higher. Okay. So here the architect is working like a contractor. Okay. The next is contractor arranges material and labor at his cost and keeps proper account. So it is up to the contractor also to keep an account of from where the materials are being procured, and he has to keep the bills of it, or the laborers from where he is procuring those, and the bill, proper account of that has to be maintained, that on which days how many laborers came and worked. Okay. And in the contract document, the contractor is paid by a profit of X percentage as agreed upon beforehand. So before actually the contractor goes for procuring the material and the laborers, in the contract document itself, the percentage over the cost that is going to be incurred later, that percentage amount is fixed only. So it is simpler because not too much of complexity are there, but nobody knows how much the owner has to pay to the contractor at the end of the day. It can keep on increasing. Okay. So what is its advantages and disadvantages? So here construction can start before design is completed. Right? It is something like item-rate contract only. So you can start the construction before the total design is complete. Whatever part is completed, sign an agreement, get it constructed, only the percentage has remained the same. So whatever material is procured, get it supplied, pay that bill, and a percentage of that you pay the contractor. Now, if the contractor is efficient in utilization of the resources, then the cost to the client should represent a fair price for the work undertaken. That means if the contractor is efficient, whatever resources are required at whatever cost, he is procuring that material only. So he is fairly unbiased towards all the suppliers and providing the best possible at the optimum price of the material and the laborers which he is finding in market, and supplying that and the bill against that only. Then whatever is the cost that the client incurs is accepted to be a fair cost. Okay, irrespective of whatever contract he would have signed. Now that amount of money is equivalent to if you would have signed a lump sum contract, probably that same amount of money he would have to pay. And the disadvantages are, if you know the first advantage, then the disadvantage is just the reverse. Until the project completes, nobody knows how much money has to be spent. Okay, and the example that Rajdeep came up with, that the contractor will always be searching for the supplier who gives a higher priced material, or say the contractor will go and bring in say 20 ton of steel, whereas he only need maybe 15 or 16. So he has kept an extra for emergency usage, which he has already purchased, and he has already given the bill of that. So you are going to pay for 20 ton of reinforcement instead of 15. So ऐसा बहुत बार होता है. You will see that whenever you are going for painting your houses, many of you might have seen, like paints are available in 1 liter, 4 liter, 10 liter, 20 liter in that containers. So what sometimes the contractor does is he purchases n number of 4 liter or n number of 10 liter of buckets, or a combination of both. But if now he will always purchase a quantity which is more than the amount which he requires, because he is going to get the money against the cost which he is going to invest. Now he paints your house properly as you feel like. He gets the money because he has shown you the bill, and the excess paint which he has, he takes it and takes it to his home. So if you are at all at any point of time eager to find out what happens to that money, you just go to the house of a local laborers who works as a painter. You will see that his house, different walls have different paints of the best qualities available in market. Those are done by the surplus amount which has been purchased by the contractor. So to avoid that, the client always has to have a tight control on the cost, which is most of the time very difficult. For example, somebody who prefers a lump sum contract, he doesn't wants to get into it, has already paid the money which is already promised. That's okay for him. But if he is going for a cost reimbursement type, then there is absolutely high chance that he has to constantly monitor the purchase of individual material which are being billed against by the contractor. Okay. Now the other disadvantage is, only if you minimize your efficiency, then only the profit will be maximized. If the contractor is inefficient, that maximizes his profit. That means he doesn't know how to bring in the proper bills, and also he will bring a bill which is much more than what he has actually purchased. But who has to pay for that? The owner. So what owner is getting is inefficient work from the contractor, but it is profitable for the contractor, or it is non-profitable for the owner. So these are some of the advantages and disadvantages, all broadly mentioned. Next, two small thing, which is a deviation of this percentage. Now, suppose you are feeling that, okay, if I pay the percentage, what will happen is the contractor is always going to go for the highest price possible material available in market. So what you do is, you fix the cost for the contractor, that whatever bill you submit, I will pay you that bill, but for your job, I will only pay you X amount of money, not X percentage. That X amount is fixed. So now if X amount is fixed, now it is up to the contractor to decide whether he will procure higher bill or lesser bill, because that bill amount or the cost that he is going to incur doesn't affect the profit that he is going to earn. So here rises the case which Rajdeep was saying, that he will ask his friend who is the supplier to give a higher price bill, and that extra price he is going to get from the owner and dividing among both of them, his friend and the contractor, excluding the extra tax and all rest. So that can be a way of earning a profit by the contractor. But just by procuring the bill from a legitimate supplier, he cannot earn extra profit. He is going to get exactly the amount of money which is fixed back during the signing of the contract only. Okay. Okay. So you can understand this generally happens for small scale project, where if you fix a percentage, the total amount of money that you are going to get is not very high. So you fix a fixed amount of transportation cost or fixed amount of fee for the contractor. Okay. For example, say in one tractor, you bring half a tractor of sand, or you bring the full tractor of sand, the transportation cost should be fixed. Otherwise, sometimes the transporter will be at a loss, because he will say, अरे मेरा पेट्रोल तो या डीजल तो उतना ही खर्चा हुआ है, आप आधा लीजिए, पौने लीजिए या पूरा भर के लीजिए. So in that places, in that scenario, you just need to pay that fixed amount of transportation and the amount of money of the against the product, the quantity of product that you are purchasing. A very good example that I can say is, say, your e-food delivery. So irrespective of the quantity of the food that you order from Zomato or Swiggy, the delivery fix remains the same. So at that point of time, that particular situation, the transporter doesn't have any interest in reaching you earlier at a very high speed. But there are some options that if he cannot deliver at a particular time, then the delivery charges will be free, or say 10% you will get back, or the food is free, something like that. So at that point of a time, the delivery person has certain incentive because he have paid extra for faster delivery. So there he will go for fast deliveries only. So the contract which you are signing just by placing the order that you place for some online food is, I will pay this amount of money provided you pay me you provide me that quantity of food, is also a contract that you are signing. I'm sure most of you don't go through the terms and conditions of his delivery, but if you go through the terms and conditions once, you will find that all these things are written. There are conditions of bad weather. There are a lot of other conditions that it has to reach within 50 meters of your house. Now, if you are in a slum, there is no house numbers and all. So he will keep on roaming around without finding your house. But that should not be included as a fine towards him. So, okay. So these are different. So depending on the advantages and disadvantages of different kinds of cost reimbursement contract, we need to choose wisely which one should we go for. The next is the cost plus fluctuating fee contract. Here, contractor is paid by the owner the actual cost of the construction plus an amount of fee inversely variable according to the increase or decrease of the estimated cost agreed first by both the parties. So it is something like, I will pay you X, like when the contract is being signed, an estimate has been made and the estimate was given by the contractor only, suppose. So you say that as per as your estimate, I will pay you capital X amount of rupees for the material cost and delta X amount for your fees. Okay. Is the situation clear? The situation that I have placed, is it clear, or I will repeat again?
Sir, can you repeat again, sir?
Yes, I will surely. So you are signing a contract with a contractor for getting a work done, and you are during the signing of the contract only, the contractor said that that particular work which was there in the tender will incur capital X amount of rupees. Okay. So what you in the contract what you sign is, okay, if you get the work done at X amount of capital X amount of rupees, I will pay you after you're done with the job. I will pay you X amount of rupees, and for doing the work, I will pay you delta X amount of fees. But if the price of money for the cost of, sorry, I will not say price here, I have to be very particular in the terminologies. If the cost that is incurred by the contractor goes higher than capital X, then that money will be deducted from the fees that he is going to pay. That means he is a bad estimation. The estimation was really bad. So during his or the contractor has taken more time where the price of the material in market has fluctuated. It has increased because of lack of or delay or something. If the price of material increases, the contractor has to pay from his own profit to accommodate that. So here, the fee that the contractor is going to get is fixed, but it will fluctuate inversely depending on the cost that he is going to incur. So मान लो कि ये it is very common thing. For example, say you ask for a sack of cement or say 20 sacks of cement. 20-50 किलो करके एक sack होता है. 20 बोरी तुमने मंगवाया. So contractor ने आके बोला कि supplier, okay, I will supply you this. इसलिए per bag will be around 900 rupees and my labor charge will be 1000 rupees. So 900 into 20 is whatever 18,000 rupees plus the amount which has been promised to him, say 2,000 rupees or 1,000 rupees, whatever the fees is. But once the contractor goes to a market and finds that अरे 900 रुपए में तो वो वाला सीमेंट है ही नहीं, 950 रुपए हो गया. So 50 rupees करके जो extra देना पड़ा, the fees which he was supposed to get 2,000, that will now be decreasing. He has to pay. He doesn't have to pay from his own pocket because the cost will be the amount of bill which he is procuring. So 950 करके he will bring the bill, and he will be paid that amount of money by the owner, but the owner will reduce the fees that was promised to that particular contractor if only this kind of contract is assigned beforehand. When the contract was signed, if this was a type of contract, then only it gives the provision for signing this fluctuating fee plus cost contract. Have you got it, Asdev?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the same example with which I started can also be the same key. I am giving you to do a work. You say in how many days you can do, I will pay you the labor charge. So you say within 15 days I can do. So I say, okay, instead of 15 days, I am giving you 16 days. But if you cannot finish in 16 days, I will deduct your fees from the 17th day onwards. Okay, so sometimes this cost plus fluctuating fee contract works as a good incentive for the better quality of work by the supplier. Okay, let's finish up quickly. So the factors influencing the choice of the type of contract. So on what basis should you select which type of contract to sign? And this should have been discussed beforehand, but now if I discuss these points, it would be easier for you to relate. The first one is the appropriateness for providing an adequate incentive for efficient performance by the contractor. That which kind of contract is most efficient as an incentive or proper incentive for the contractor, that has to be determined. Like contractor is ultimately going to do the work. Owner is supposed to pay only. So which is more beneficial to the contractor without huge loss for the owner has to be decided. Next is the ability to introduce changes. Now, if your project needs a lot of changes during the work, don't go for a lump sum contract. Go for an item rate contract or a cost-based contract. But if you are absolutely sure about the designs and all, say row housing. If you are doing a row housing, all the houses will look the same. So once the first houses is constructed, all the houses, if you sign a, all the other houses will not need any further changes. So you can go for a lump sum contract. So that is the second point. The third is the allocation of risk. Now, depending on the contractor or the owner, who has the capability to take how much amount of risk, they will decide which kind of contract to be signed. Okay. And the last one is definitely always there, that the start and the completion date of the project. Depending on the span which you have to do the work done, you have to go for signing of the contract. If you have too much amount of time, okay, go for lump sum contract. You pay the money and let the work done. Or if you have a deadline to meet, go for item-based contract where labor charge, material charge up to a particular date is fixed. Beyond that, you can charge penalty. So this is a brief of contract document, which I will not discuss right now. I will give you a better one, a contract document which is specific for architectural only, building construction only. Tomorrow, first half, sometimes I will get to the department and send you in your need trees the scanned copy of the document. I don't know whether I have sent it already or not, but I will again send it. In the meantime, I will put it in the WhatsApp group also, that the copy of that scanned copy of the document. So you can have a glance at that and we will follow that text. So all of you have to open that pages in your system while on a Teams meeting. Okay. And if somebody has the opportunity to get a handout or hard copy at your home, you can do that also. So any question on this for today? We have just discussed the different types of contracts with their individual advantages and disadvantages. Okay, because next class onwards, when we will be taking up a lot of sections of different contract documents, we will find there will be a lot of criticalities. You will always constantly try to relate yourself with which kind of contract it is relatable. Okay, so that will help you in understanding. And from time to time, I will be asking you these particular things to clarify you in a better way. So that's all for today. If you have any questions, you can come up. or else I will end the class today here.